I'm Marcus.
I'm Ryan.
And together we are the
Northwest Sports Fanatics.
We here with our weekly NFL playoff recap. We had some great games this weekend.
Right.
Wow, real great games. So we're going to start off in the NFC conference review with the Seattle Seahawks versus the New Orleans Saints.
Quality game.
Real nice game. I think the Saints got started a little late there. They didn't get the wake-up call. Some of the standout players from the game for me, Seattle, of course, the winning team. Marshawn Lynch, beast mode.
Right.
28 carries, 140 yards. He ended up with 2 touchdowns, and he had the huge touchdown run at the end of the game that kind of sealed the deal for them there.
Yeah, Skittles everywhere.
Skittles everywhere. They was throwing the Skittles. That's a great sight to see. Home field advantage, man.
Right. Yeah,
you
absolutely.
gotta love it. And I want to give a quick shout out also in that game to Doug Baldwin. Even though he only had 2 receptions for 30 yards, he made the huge catch at the end of the game.
Right. Nice key catch for that first down.
Real clutch catch for Doug Baldwin. And Russell Wilson, man, you got to step your game up, man. I'm on your head, man. You got Seattle coming in. I mean, San Fran coming in. We're going to need a better game from you if y'all going to advance to the championship game, to the Super Bowl. Now, what about on the defensive side of the ball in that game? Any players stood out to you?
Yeah, a few good standouts. Number one, though, hands down, would be Earl Thomas III. I think with him, he's really solidifying himself as not only the best secondary player in the NFL, but I mean, you could even argue corner safety combo, out of anyone that plays in the corner safety position. But 11 tackles, 7 solo, 4 assisted. Pretty solid game, but I think the key reason that they won is they shut down Jimmy Graham. They really needed him to come to play. They shut him down, and they had Earl Thomas III specifically on him for a majority of the game, and Jimmy Graham only had 1 catch for 8 yards. And that's not really going to get it done for that particular team. Nice shout out to Michael Bennett as well, former Buck. Right? 6 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, and a half a sack.
Wow.
So he played pretty well for the Seahawks, and they've been really relying on him to give him some key snaps. And one key stat I wanted to throw out there, third down efficiency. Seahawks, 36%. It's not the greatest number that shouts out to you, but the Saints were 25%. And sometimes when you have that little margin of error, a few of those third downs that don't happen to come out your way, then you end up losing by 8.
That's the difference.
That's the difference in the game.
Exactly. That's the difference between winning and losing.
Yeah.
So the next game, San Francisco 49ers versus the Carolina Panthers.
Smash mouth game.
Interesting game. I love that game. If you like defense, you love all of the defensive players that was involved with that game.
Right.
On the offensive side of the ball, what stood out to me is, of course, Mr. the Anquan Big Game Bolden.
Right.
He's been there before, and he's back to do it again. 8 receptions, 136 yards. That was huge for them. And also, Mr. OG. I think he's one of the more... I wouldn't say underrated because he still gets the accolades as far as the Pro Bowls and the All-Pro.
Okay.
But I don't think he get as much respect for the type of player that he is, and that's Frank Gore. 17 carries, 84 yards. By far the heart and soul of that 49ers offense there.
Yeah, I would agree.
And Kaepernick, he came through. He didn't have a spectacular game. He ended up with 1 passing touchdown and 1 rushing. And the most talked about is his touchdown celebration.
Right, mocking Cam.
Yeah, all right, do your thing out there, Cap.
Right.
I ain't mad at you, bro. I ain't mad at you. Now, what about on the defensive side of the ball from that game?
On the defensive side, I thought, obviously, Panthers had that early touchdown with Steve Smith. But obviously, the injuries come into play, and he couldn't really play full strength. But Navarro Bowman, one of my favorites, Patrick Willis, and Ahmad Brooks combined for 28 tackles.
Wow.
15 solo, 13 assisted, 3.5 sacks combined, and 1 interception. So when your linebacking core is doing that, I didn't even mention Alden Smith or Justin Smith, you're going to win games typically, even on the road in that harsh environment. And one key stat I wanted to throw out there, Mike Tolbert and D'Angelo Williams. Remember when we said in the last video you need to combine for 100, and they had 13 carries for 33 yards.
Wow.
So that's not going to get it done, and that's the reason why the Panthers lost that game, 23-10.
Get Cam a running back, man. Kenyon, this your offseason, step it up, man. Get Cam some help out there.
Right.
Now, on the American Football Conference, or AFC, for all the people that don't know, we had the New England Patriots versus the Indianapolis Colts.
Game was a little bit more of a blowout than I assumed it was going to be.
Yeah, I expected the Colts to put up a little more fight, but as you know, it's a process you
Right.
got to go through to
Right.
get to the top. You don't just wake up and say I'm top of the world.
Right.
You got to go through the process to get there. You
Right.
won the game. You made the playoffs last year.
Right.
This year you won a wild card. Then next year maybe you can take that next step.
Yeah, AFC Championship.
AFC
game.
Championship. But the offensive standout from that game is hands down Mr. LeGarrette Blunt.
Yeah, Mr. Oregon Duck himself.
Well,
Pretty amazing what he did.
Mr. One-Hitter Quitter,
Right.
LeGarrette Blunt. 24 carries, 166 yards, 4 touchdowns. Hold on. 24 carries, 166 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a huge touchdown run at the end. He has deceptive speed. You think Blunt is not fast, but once he get to going, man,
Right.
very hard to bring down. He did all of that in the game. Tom Brady only threw for 198 yards. It wasn't relied upon to do any passing. And Julian Edelman, a.k.a. Mini Wes Walker,
Right.
6 receptions, 84 yards. But the next game, I think the missing of Gronk is really going to hurt. Now, what about the defense side of the ball in that game?
Really quickly on the offensive side, I want to just chime in real quick. I think you want to give a real key shout out to Bill Belichick and
Okay.
Josh McDaniels, because the game plan that they had watching the Colts play Kansas City before, they couldn't stop the run in that game. And then obviously you're running for 46 rushes, for 234 yards, 6 TDs.
Ridiculous.
Obviously you're running more than you need to, but if they can't stop it, I mean, that's great coaching. So shout out to them. And then on the defensive side for the Pats, Jamie Collins. This is kind of a new guy.
Wow.
You don't really know how good he's going to be. 6 tackles, 3 solo.
Rookie.
1 sack, 1 interception. Great performance by the rookie. And then another 2 players that I thought played pretty damn well. Dante Hightower from
The Bama.
Bama, Roll Tide,
Roll
and
Tide.
Alfonso Denard. 10 tackles combined, 3 interceptions. So that's obviously a key stat for that defense there that sometimes gets a little lazy, but obviously for the most part they obviously showed that they're a little bit better than the Colts this year.
Good to see Hightower stepping up with Spikes down.
Right, with the
it's-
injury.
Yeah, it's good to see him up in there. And go back to Collins. I remember in the draft when they picked Collins, a lot of people was kind of scratching their head like,
Yeah.
why did you pick this guy?
Right.
And now he's showing up, so that's awesome for him
Yeah.
there.
Belichick, they really do their homework over there at New England.
Got a great nucleus of young cats out there on the defense side of the ball.
Absolutely.
And for the last game, San Diego Chargers versus the Denver Broncos.
Right.
Wow, what a game. Two great quarterbacks. Of course, the Broncos pulled it out in the end. With Peyton Manning, he didn't have a Peyton Manning game, but
No.
he still got the job done. 230 yards, 2 touchdowns. A key for the Broncos winning that game was no Sean Moreno. And I kind of called him out, saying you needed more than the 18 yards he had rushing the first game.
Right.
And he responded with 82 and also got in the end zone. Julius Thomas was also big with them moving the chain, 6 receptions, 76 yards. Wes Walker and Demaryius Thomas also each had touchdowns for the Denver Broncos. What about on the defensive side of the ball? Any players that stood out from
Yeah,
that
on the
game for you?
defense side of the Broncos, in that game, Broncos Chargers, a few players stood out to me. Sean Phillips, bringing him over.
He had to.
Malik Jackson, Jeremy Mency. These aren't really big name guys. Sean Phillips, you might have heard from a little bit in the past, but 7 tackles and 4 sacks. And in the first half, the Chargers couldn't move the ball at all. And then they started getting on a little bit of a run, but I thought a key stat was obviously Ryan Matthews. He only got to play in the first half, and you only had 5
That
carries
ankle
for
injury.
26 yards. So if they would have had a little bit more of him in the second half, I thought the game would have been a little bit closer. But Chris Harris Jr., going down with the ACL tear for Denver. That's going to be a real key moving forward, obviously next week or coming up here on the weekend against New England. But he's been their best corner all year. So shout out to him, even though he had a great year this year, 65 tackles, 3 picks. But I think the key stat was third down for me. Watching them on third down. Broncos on third down, 69%.
Wow.
Right?
Automatic
San Diego Chargers, 33%.
shot.
And that's really what it's going to do for you. And also the rushing stats. Broncos rushed for 133 yards, and the Chargers ran for 65. So that's usually the difference. And then you come into a game that is decided by 7 points.
Especially in the playoffs.
In the playoffs, I mean, that's a big chunk of why you win or lose the games at this time of year.
All right, that's our review of this past weekend's divisional games. Check back with us for our NBA weekly review and also our preview of the upcoming championship games this weekend.
Yeah, AFC and NFC championship games.
Yeah, I can't wait. Northwest Sports Fanatics.
Shout out, Northwest Sports Fanatics. Catch you next video.